The tallow tree, a super invader with toxic leaves and no natural enemies in North America, is conquering the South. Overtaking forests from Texas to Florida, tallows grow 3 times faster than most native hardwoods, and each one casts off 100,000 seeds a year. Controlled burns haven't stopped their spread, nor have herbicide sprays from helicopters. Llewellyn Everage, who directs interns and volunteers at the Audubon, Louisiana Nature Center, gesturing towards an area of the nature center that had been cleared of tallow using heavy machinery, with tallows yet to be cleared in the background. The super invader tree. Tallows grow into fully mature trees in just 3 years, far outpacing native maples, oaks, cypress, and elms. Their leaves are toxic to some animals, and they cast off litter that changes soil chemistry and disadvantages competitors. Also known as the popcorn tree and candleberry tree, tallows have been planted widely since their first seeds arrived. Coveted as ornamentals for their vibrant fall foliage, they have seeds encased in small green capsules that split when ripe, revealing a small cluster resembling a puffy kernel of popcorn. Their oils have been used in candle and soap making, and beekeepers like their bountiful nectar. But ecologists say they do more harm than good, decreasing the diversity of plants, trees, and insects, and weakening the food chain for birds and animals. Cutting them down works only when each stump is immediately doused with chemicals. Harvesting them for biofuel remains more a promise than a practical solution. Some scientists say introducing a flea beetle from the tallow's native habitat in eastern China may be the best alternative. Yes, they're aware of nightmare scenarios with other non-native plants and bugs, environmental scientist Michael Massamy said. But he also points to success stories, such as the aquatic weevil that munches on giant salvinia, a floating fern from Brazil that had been clogging waterways in Florida and Texas until its insect enemy was brought in. The weevil underwent a similar line of testing through the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and like the flea beetle, the weevil spends its entire life cycle on one plant, he said. Importing an organism to help control another organism right off the bat doesn't sound very intuitively smart to do, but it turns out that especially with insects and plants, they've evolved over many millions of years, and in a lot of cases, the insect is very host-specific, said Massamy, the invasive species coordinator for the Barataria terrebonii National Estuary Program along the Louisiana Gulf Coast. Related articles previous. 1 next. Warning over YouTube's iOS app after users report it drains. Women really do fancy men with muscles and money according. Lost Bronze Age cities in Turkey are pinpointed using artificially cooling the planet by spraying aerosols into. Share this article. Share script dm.later, bundle, function, if, dm.rotator, new dm.rotator, p22, page size, 1, page count, 1.0, active class, active, rotate, false, $, number p22.bigshare.on, click, function, dms.facebook.post.top, related. The flea beetle is a potential biocontrol agent that may be released as early as next year to combat the spread of the Chinese tallow tree. In this case, the flea beetle, Bicoshocca lares, generally ignores other plants as it eats the roots and leaves of the tallow, Triadica sebifer, a host-specific tendency tested on about 150 other plant species in a decade of laboratory work in the US and China, researchers said. The USDA's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service has been working on an environmental impact assessment, which will include a public comment period. Everage holds an uprooted stem from a Chinese tallow. No portion of the tallow root can be left behind or a new tree can sprout. The 86-acre site, with walking trails and boardwalks winding through a swampy forest, flooded in 2005 and became overrun with Chinese tallow. If approved, the bugs could be released sometime in 2018. Meanwhile, researchers in Louisiana are studying tallows to gain a better understanding of the beetle's effectiveness once they are let loose. Benjamin Franklin sent tallow seeds from London to a friend in Georgia in the 1700s, but genetic testing cleared the founding father of blame for the kind of tallows growing so aggressively today, Those trees were apparently introduced by federal biologists around 1905, according to research led by Evan Simon, an evolutionary biologist at Rice University, that was published in the American Journal of Botany in 2011. The tallow tree, a super invader with toxic leaves and no natural enemies in North America. A Chinese tallow tree branch is seen at the Audubon, Louisiana Nature Center in New Orleans. U.S. Forest Service data show tallow now spreading across 10 states. Its growth nearly tripled in Texas in the last 2 decades, and increased 500% in Louisiana, where its higher tolerance for salinity enables it to crowd out moss-covered bald cypress in swamps and bayous. Populations also are up along the Atlantic coast, from Florida to the Carolinas. Tallows take advantage of disturbances, said Nancy Lowenstein, an invasive plant specialist at Auburn University. Storms, floods, construction sites, logging sites, anything that disrupts the environment will give an invasive like tallow an opportunity to take over. The help can't come too soon for the keepers of America's suffering forests. Tallows grow into fully mature trees in just 3 years, far outpacing native maples, oaks, cypress, and elms. Their leaves are toxic to some animals, and they cast off litter that changes soil chemistry and disadvantages competitors. Chinese tallows are very competitive, and they have no natural predators here like in their native China, said Karen Rollins, an invasive species specialist at the University of Georgia's Center for Invasive Species Ecosystem Health. Very few if any insects recognize it as a food source, so it has basically become a super invader. Also known as the popcorn tree and candleberry tree, tallows have been planted widely since their first seeds arrived. Coveted as ornamentals for their vibrant fall foliage, they have seeds encased in small green capsules that split when ripe, revealing a small cluster resembling a puffy kernel of popcorn. Their oils have been used in candle and soap making, and beekeepers like their bountiful nectar. Some scientists say introducing a flea beetle from the tallow's native habitat in eastern China may be the best alternative. Leaves from a Chinese tallow can be seen above. But ecologists say they do more harm than good, decreasing the diversity of plants, trees, and insects, and weakening the food chain for birds and animals. At least one study found that frog eggs are less likely to hatch into tadpoles in water littered with tallow. And since the seeds don't provide much nutrition, Massamy said they're like junk food for migrating birds. It's taken more than a decade to clear tallow from just half the 86-acre Audubon, Louisiana Nature Center after floods from Hurricanes Katrina and Rita. We still have 40-plus acres that are 95% Chinese tallow, so we have a lot of work to do, and it's going to be a long haul, said Llewellyn Everage, who directs volunteers and interns at the site. This is not a quick problem to fix.